An adjunct at Hunter. Happy to be here.
And usually my experience in doing these is that folks will kind of trickle in a little bit. But also, since we don't know who is coming in terms of expertise, and this is a kind of revisit, we're trying something new where it's a revisit session. This was my first webinar. I think it was like on March 18th. That I did, and so I wanted to take a revisit and really kind of dig deeper into the tool, and hopefully if we have a manageable group, give you some time to practice with the tool and then kind of talk about it. So the kind of rules of the webinar are that keep yourself on mute until you want to participate, but I believe that you guys have the ability to do that. I tried to kind of leave the tools as open as they can be. Sheila will be managing the chat, and so if you do have trouble and it seems like I'm focused on something else, she's going to interrupt me and tell me like, hey, there was a question or we're having something's come up that we need to take a little break. So the first thing was to try and, even though it's not in real time, I asked some of you guys to take a survey, just telling us about your reason for coming to the workshop. It's not too long, and because this workshop will be talking about the tools, it kind of gets your feet wet, and I'll show you how I will use that. So if you haven't, just take 2 minutes to do the survey, and or start up again. I know that seems like an awkward stop, but just gonna give you another minute. And you saw me just looking at my phone to set that timer.
We need the background music like
I know.
we had last week with the music PD.
I saw a great PD this week where they did that in the waiting room. So forgive me, folks, for not having better music or any music right now, especially since I also gave a PD on music. Sheila, play some music if you can. Okay. So there is a second housekeeping thing that I'm going to show you. So the second housekeeping is I did get a chance, because Laura sends out the list of folks who are participating, to see that a lot of you have Gmail accounts, and that's perfect, because the last housekeeping before we start in full swing is if you can, if it's familiar to you, I'd like you to join our Google Classroom. And there's two reasons for this. One is that in order to do this kind of deeper dive into Google Forms and quizzes, I wanted to show you differences between how things look inside of a Google Classroom and then outside of a Google Classroom. The second reason to join the Google Classroom is that if you've been on a webinar with me before, what I started doing was giving you asynchronous resources, because sometimes in a webinar you have a question, but for different reasons you can't ask it, or it's not answered properly. That gives us a way to kind of keep in touch after the webinar, and for you to see resources like videos showing you what I've done in bigger detail or from a different angle. So if you'd also do the housekeeping of joining this Google Classroom, I'll start to now go to seeing how many people are in. So this is the code. And Sheila, can you also put that in the chat?
We're already there, Christine.
Oh, wow.
We're on it.
Thanks. All right. And so you're basically, again, those directions are to go to Google Classroom. If you're really new to it, you just Google it. And then you're going to press this little plus sign that says join class and put in that code. And so if you've done those things, let us have an indication by saying so in chat, or if you're familiar with Zoom, give us a kind of thumbs up. The chat's kind of quiet, so I'm thinking that people are doing those tasks. Yes?
Someone's saying it took them to the assessing oral skills classroom, but let me just double check.
It might be if they were in that webinar, that hopefully that's not the case.
Let me just double check that it's the right one.
I'll do that too. Terribly sorry if that is the case, but let's see. You can join that one too. So our classroom should look like this. And I'll go into my settings and make sure of that code. And it seems like that is the code. Okay. So, and I suspect that some of you are, like me, going to multiple webinars and kind of following each other, which is great. It's been a really nice community. So you might see some materials if you've been in my other webinars that I'm kind of reusing, but again, it'll be a deeper dive and you'll be able to ask questions is my hope. Okay. And so I'll be able to kind of check out who's in here. Looks like quite a few of you made it in. Fantastic. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to check out is our form. So, and now I'm gonna just show you a little bit about who we are in this room. Since you're not communicating, you're just kind of listening to Sheila and I right now. So this is the form that you filled out. And as a teacher that set that up, I can go into my Google Drive and see in the back end of that. And this is good for you guys too to see, because in this workshop, there's going to be a point where I'll ask you to also work from your own drive so that you can practice the tools rather than just watch them. So this is basically what Google Forms looks like from the back end when you're creating it. You can see I have a bunch that I've done today. This is the one, the basic survey form that you guys just took. And so in order to see your responses, I have to go in this back end view of it. And sure enough, you'll see, are you guys hearing like my hard drive going round and round? Do you hear some noise?
A little bit.
All right, hopefully that goes away. All right, good stuff. I can see that there's 15 people that took this survey. Can you guys see that okay?
Yep.
And I could see that most people have, or 66% have made some kind of survey like the one you just took. 60% have used a form to have students submit work. No one's done a choose your own adventure. That's a fun one, and I'll spend more time on that then. It's just a form. It has some features that you probably just didn't tick on your forms when you've made them in the past to see. Okay, so it looks like most of us have made a form, so we can go pretty deep in this workshop. And looks like we are evenly distributed amongst elementary teachers and middle, high school, and teaching adults. Do you have a Google Classroom that you can use now as a teacher? So most of you do, but for the folks who do not, don't worry. Sheila is going, anytime we do a quiz that folks have, or a form I should say, that folks have access to because it's in the classroom, Sheila will also give you a public link to it, so will look the same, but it will actually ask you on the top for an email. You will still always need to use a Gmail for it because I made it with a Gmail quote unquote school, but you'll be able to see the same stuff that we do. So don't worry if you don't have a Google Classroom right now as a teacher. Okay, some of the things that you hope for are streamlined quiz making, creating assignments with Google Forms. It is tedious. Someone said it feels like it's tedious. Different ways to engage students. More familiar with Google Classroom, confident using it. How private Google Forms are. And how to give feedback. Okay, these are all things I'm prepared. So to show you, so let's just get to it. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to my slides. And kind of now that we've done the kind of basic housekeeping, I wanted to kind of tell you what I think, not what I think, what I plan for our agenda. So I still find this picture very funny. A month ago when all the stuff started, I thought, yeah, that's me, the kind of ridiculous teacher up top. And this is going to be some of the kooky stuff that can happen online. I still feel like it's really relevant. It still makes me giggle. So the agenda is this revisit and kind of maintaining the awkward, because I think that teacher is pretty awkward and I feel a lot of times very awkward using technology in my teaching when it's only technology that I have at my disposal. I miss the interpersonal connections. I'm sure you guys do too. Mm-hmm. So lessons learned, a lot of the questions that I just saw, the things that you're trying to get out of this workshop is exactly what I reflected on as still needing. A need to go deeper into what forms do, because the last workshop was just like, hey, this is a great tool, but you're on your own to figure out the details. So I feel like I'm smarter now, and I hope that by the end of the workshop, you will have that confidence. I wanted to show you some workarounds to some of the constraints of the tool that we're using, and then practice. Okay.
And along the way, sorry, just to jump in, Christine, if you guys have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat. Christine's going to keep doing her thing, and then I'll be able to answer questions if possible in the chat, or stop Christine along the way.
Yeah, definitely. So don't be shy, guys, because we're hoping that this is gonna, it's not like the last one that had like almost 200 participants. This one is smaller and that feels much better. So I'm being more informal with you, so please be more informal, even though you might have experienced those bigger ones where you can't turn on your camera or this kind of thing. I believe that you can, I've made that setting possible. And so, you know, go ahead. So I talked about these affordances last time, but I've added some constraints. But in case you didn't see that workshop last time, I think the affordances are that we have this asynchronous nature because many of our kids can't be with us in real time. There's lots of socioeconomic or family issues. New York has tiny apartments, mine included. So asynchronous can be that time when you are quiet and able to catch up on things or think. By giving a quiz, you have this data later on that you can analyze. You can use, as I showed in my last workshop, media, photos, video, audio to make it a richer experience than just a paper and pencil test. And you have a chance to give smart feedback and personalize. So each, I mean, you can do this in paper too, right? You can scribble on the sides and say, okay, Sheila, I see that you got this point and last time you didn't. So you can do that in a paper quiz. The constraints, and I really thought about this because I thought maybe I shouldn't do another workshop on quizzes. Maybe people have already learned how to do that. Maybe at this point, a month into this crisis that we're in, we're seeing constraints where maybe we should do a workshop on how to retain students or bigger kind of issues. So I listed that as some of the constraints, that this is a traditional assessment. So for our learners, sometimes, not sometimes, this collaborative feel is really important. So should you be spending time doing things on individual assessment? There are pros and cons to that. And we know that our students sometimes like to work together, and there's no way of doing this form collaboratively. So that's one of the kind of constraints. Some students just may not be in the mood. I think teachers all around are experiencing that. So, you know, someone in the feedback said this can be really tedious. Is it kind of worth it? Is this like this tedium something that students are in the mood to appreciate? Because you also need positive feedback. You're also experiencing the same things they are. So what's the best value for your time? And this kind of like love and hate, and I think towards differentiation. Some people love to be tested, like they just like to know where they are. But it's still this idea of this is how you present it. If it's a quiz, an assessment, and students are not in the mood, they might actually avoid going to it. Anything to add to that, Sheila, from your experience as you take a drink? Sorry.
No, it was making me think about the number one error that all teachers or anyone who's ever made a form, when they don't ask people to put their name in or their email, and they just get all of this data and they don't know who it belongs to, and then you kind of learn from your mistakes. So there's definitely, you know, learning from errors, I think.
Yeah. So to that, you guys have told me you're familiar with quizzes. I want to kind of set some language for this. What I gave you at the start is a Google form. What we're doing throughout this, it's the tool is called Google Form. But sometimes you'll see people also referring to it as a self-grading quiz. But the technology is still everything. The tool is just Google Forms. What makes it a quiz is that you're going to give points to it. So in terms of quiz, and even in Google Classroom, it will say assignment type quiz. If you're there, I don't know if this is confusing you more, that's a place where you can put formative and summative feedback. If it's in Google Classroom, or if you set it, your settings as such, you can also give a grade to it. So going back to our slide earlier, can I do that? When you're talking about the constraints, you might want to think about if you want to put points on it, if you want that kind of feel to it, or if you just want to give feedback. So the technology is the same. You have all these options and you can change back between the two. Okay, so again, these are things that they're forms and they do not have any grades to them, right? So I think Becky, my colleague at International Community High School, is here, and this is a copy of one of her forms where she's using them for office hours. And it's cute. I hope you don't mind, Becky, that I'm sharing it. And then there's also just traditional event RSVPs, like can you attend? And Google Forms gives you these templates. Sheila, do you want to talk about this one?
Sure. I just realized it is a quiz because I did give individual feedback, but I wanted to share this quiz that I made. Should I put it in the chat, or we'll save that for after?
Go ahead.
Put it in the chat?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't have the link. So
So
Sheila has a link, but I don't because I didn't make this one.
if you, this is a cool form that I did using works of art because we're doing theme days in New York City, according to the chancellor, for spring break. And what I really like about it is that it's broken up into sections, which I think is really useful for our L's. Christine, if you want, I can, you guys can try it out, but maybe I can show on this side using the section and then how to view it. Is that okay?
Yeah, so go ahead and share screen, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna show everybody the back end of this form, and then I'll show you what the students see. So it looks like this, and in the form, no, not in the back end. If you see here, when I created this form, each section is broken up by a different painting so that you can put a painting and then ask a question. And actually the Met has some really great resources on using art with L's, and that's where these questions came from. But when you're creating your quiz, you can use this option here to create a section. And then when the student sees it, which I'm going to show you now, or you guys can see it when you do it, is that it breaks up each of the questions into a section. So I think it helps our learners not become too overwhelmed. Now I have this same thing. So if you see here, I have the first painting and then a question. And so the students don't have to scroll and scroll and scroll. There's one area and a question, and I think it does it for 6 different sections so that you can see that there's a way to break up the content and then the questions.
This looks quite nice, Sheila. Can you lower it a little bit so we can take a read?
Sure.
Close your eyes and make a mental list of the things in your bedroom, closet, or drawer.
So this actually came all from the Met. I didn't make this up, but I did make up the Google form. And then I'll just show you on the back end here because I got a question about making the sections here. If you look here on the Google form, I have the image of the painting, the question. I allowed students to answer with a long answer. And then here you can add the section. So that can break up what the students see on each screen, this thing section.
And actually, I think this is great timing to kind of show some tools and then give you guys a little bit, we'll give you a little bit of an overview and a little bit of time to ask questions about the tools that you see. So I'm gonna share my screen again.
Sorry, I kind of abruptly did that.
No. It's, okay.
Also, I think I'm gonna find the link to that Met, the Met area because it was so great.
Okay. All right. So now where's my quiz? Okay. So this was the back end of the quiz. Not sorry, I'm probably being confusing here. This is the back end. I have to teach myself to call it a form. This is the back end of the form that you took. And so I'm going to go more basic, and I'll try and do that briefly for you. So you saw the responses. This again was the section break that you saw Sheila just describe, and her recommendation that it's nice to have section breaks because then you don't have to scroll if your form is something that's longer. I think these are pretty self-explanatory, but I'm going to just go through them, right? So this is how you add a new question. This is how you import questions. Import questions will let you go to all of your quizzes. And sorry, I did it again, all your forms, and put in some of those questions that you liked. So I'll show you what I mean. Here are some other forms that I've done. So let's say, can you attend our next Zoom talk? I could put that in to this quiz, to this form. It's so hard to not do. Okay, so And now that will, my screen real estate's a little bit small. Okay, I can import that question. So again, it might be something that you haven't tried before. And so this is part of our deeper dive. Okay. So again, that was importing questions. I don't know why it's jumping like that for me. That's kind of fun, isn't it? Okay, then the other one is for text or title, images, video, and then the section break. So any questions on that? Am I going at an okay speed?
Yeah, no questions over here.
Okay. And then the other things that I see that maybe folks don't necessarily do in their first attempts is they don't necessarily customize. But if you want to change the header, you just click on image uploaded. I know it seems kind of strange because you're thinking, oh, that must be a unique one, but that will actually then give you a menu of different headers that are already made for you. But you can also upload your own photo and headers as long as they're in that kind of header long rectangle base shape. And of course you can change things like the color or fonts. So that's the very basic of doing a form. There's something that I'm going to show you next here. Actually, I think what I'll do is I'll have you experience it. So you remember on the form, that on this form, I asked you, have you ever done a choose your own adventure story? So I'm going to show you what one looks like by having you experience it. It's very short. It's an elementary school example. Sheila, can you put that link into the chart and then people can experience it, and then I'll return back here, and it's not very long, maybe 3 minutes, and then I'll show you how I made it.
I actually don't think I have the link to that.
It's on the very top of our slides.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. So what we've accomplished now, but I think most of the group came in with those skills, is just going over how to make a basic form, and you can make that in any Gmail account. And so what I'm going to show you now in this Choose Your Own Adventure is that just using the skills that you have to make a form, this time you're going to experience something that is over here. And it says, no, it's not in that one. Let me show it to you in my other one. So there's first take that Choose Your Own Adventure to see what it looks like as a student. And I'm gonna get my share screen in order here.
How many minutes should we give? I have the elevator music ready.
Okay, elevator music for maybe 3 minutes.
Okay.
Is this it for us? We're destined to be two people with vision.
let us have an indication if you're finishing up.
It's 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Okay.
As soon as you said that, so let me have a little bit of feedback in the chat room or with your voice. How was that experience for you?
Viviana said she liked it. She said it's fun. Teresa said very cute. Okay, Nick said would be fun for proficient English students. Mm-hmm. Danette said she liked it.
So I'm just going into the one inside of Google Classroom. So this is something that you can access later. But depending on how you did it, whether you used the link that Sheila gave in the chat or this one inside Google Classroom, I'll show you that the best way to make this is to first write out the story. And it can be a regular page book too. So first I made the story and I had these page numbers. Then inside of the form, so you just saw us making questions. Actually, we didn't go through the questions, but this is a question. It's a multiple choice question. And what's new is that when you scroll over on this side, there's something here that says, go to section based on answer. So the form is giving you a way to kind of do some kind of learning analytics. If you get this, if you do, it's not exactly if you get this correct, but if you choose this answer, then differentiate and take you to this path. Just like the regular choose your own adventure books, right? Like it would tell you like, go to page 3, go to page 4 if you made this decision. So this is kind of a deeper look inside and how you would make it. There's also a how-to video on Google Classroom telling you step by step, but basically you're taking the answer and then you know how Sheila showed you these sections, how to make sections, they all have a number. So if they're choosing this one, I tell it to go to this section. And that's just like a hack for making the form do something a little bit more creative. Any questions about that?
Not yet.
Not yet. So shall I move on? What I have planned next is to show you, these are all forms where you're not collecting any points or grading students or giving them feedback, right? It's just, you give the form because you want to know, is this a good office hour, or can we meet at this time? Or what's your knowledge? And perhaps even I want it to be anonymous because I'm just trying to get a poll, but an asynchronous poll of what people are understanding or getting information from them. So that's the form. And I feel like everybody can make a form because everybody has access to a Google email. And even your students can make these with the caveat that they want to ask good questions or think about the structure of their questions, just like we're considering it for our students. How many questions? What's the purpose of the quiz or the survey? So shall I move on?
No questions so far.
Okay, I don't know what that means, but you guys know that you can also do like a little reaction button, like a thumbs up or thumbs down. Maybe I should go back to my slides and show you how to do that. I typically start, I didn't do it this time. Oops, someone said I'm lost. That's not good. Okay, so typically I start, and I did have a warm-up for you, but my apologies, I skipped it. Let's practice the chat a little bit, and I think this is actually timely as well. So inside the chat box, which should be right here on your Zooms, tell us the best compliment you have given to someone this week, or the best one you received. And I put compliment here, but you could also say feedback, because this is what I'm going to be getting at now with the part 2 of the workshop, which is showing why you might want to make something a quiz, because you can give feedback. The other button is this reaction button, so you can, someone got happy birthday, good. A student told me I should be a YouTuber. That's a great one.
That's true. It made me smile.
That's awesome. I told a presenter that his presentation was good, was excellent, good.
Excellent. Oh, I love that.
Great comment, Teresa. Okay, so, you know, with these webinars, I don't know whether if you're, and I'm sure you're experiencing this too, people participate in different ways.
So I think maybe the confusing thing, that just so everybody's aware, that I pasted the link from the form into the chat to make it easy to navigate to, but everybody has access to Christine's resources in the classroom. So she has a how-to video on how to create the choose your own adventure. She has the choose your own adventure. I think you also have the script inside of there.
Mm-hmm.
So she has all of those resources for you to go back to afterwards.
Right. So if you want to take another look at that, and I think, again, going back to when I surveyed you at the beginning, when someone said this is tedious, it is tedious to do that. So that's why in here, I give you a kind of template. And in preparing for today, I thought, oh, we could make our own choose your own adventure, and we could do like something like Mr. Rogers, like looking for the helpers, and like, okay, like you're having a bad day, like choose, what do you choose to do next? Do you take deep breaths, or do you cook your favorite food, and something like that. So I think there's a lot of potential for creativity with them. So do see how I kind of set this up with the link, and watch the video. It is going to be tedious, but it could be also quite cute to do with students. Okay, so question before you end this webinar: what would you recommend when you want to time the students? So Google Forms, you know, just started as something for surveying, and I think teachers asked for the ability to, since they were using Google Classroom, to have some kind of quiz in it, because it didn't have that before. So they've kind of adapted, adding some things, but they didn't add a timer. Does anyone have some suggestions about that? I mean, you can simply close the quiz, but that might be too abrupt. Someone asked, what is smart feedback? Will you be explaining that? Yes. And then we have another question here. I saw you at some point clicking in a corner, and the option was to validate the question. What does that mean? Okay. I don't think you normally get the validation question, but let's see if it comes up again, and let's just follow it. It might be inside this kind of choose your own, but there were some pieces that I saw coming up depending on which kind of classroom I was in. So
Yumiko made a suggestion about using Timify Me, an add-on for a timer.
Oh, okay, fantastic.
We'll
Okay,
definitely check that out.
So again, the nice thing that you guys are in my Google Classroom now is that we can check out the validation question if we can't answer it today, and some of the other ones. So keep asking questions, and I'll try and cover as many as I can in what I'm going to show you next. So again, that was just an interesting one that I wanted to show you, since you hadn't made a choose your own adventure before. And now let's get into more the point factor of a quiz.
Christine, we have one more question here about a way to prevent students from opening up other tabs in Google Form, and the teacher will be notified if they do?
Mhm. There's something that's called a Chrome extension that you can set in your settings. So let me go into one that was, I'll go into one that's the deviant one. So inside my quizzes, just watch my screen while I'll do this, and I'll try and kind of say more about settings. So sample graded quizzes, right? I'm a literacy coach at a high school, and in that high school, we have a particular Google ending. It says, you know, bronx.org. And so when I make a quiz or a Google form, inside that environment, I have different settings, okay? So this is on the movie Divergent. If I go into my settings here, you can see that it says restrict to users at this high school. And it can put in kind of restrictions. In presentation mode, I thought it was in that. Here it's in quiz mode. I can turn on lock mode. I think this is particularly good for when you're all in the same environment, because if students, this means that, as you said, Viviana, you can't, the student can't go and find the answer by doing a search. It will lock their browser to just that particular, you know, window with your quiz on it. But to other people's points, there isn't necessarily a timer here. I don't think this, I mean, you have to play with it depending on how good your students' technology is, but I'm hearing a lot about DOE computers not working as we would like them in people's homes. So I'm gonna not use that option, but I think that's what you guys were referring to. You can see here in this, so again, this starts as a form. The form starts the same. And once you go into your form, you then have these settings that you can play around with. And this, quite frankly, is the heart of making a form into a quiz. So you can, if you know that your students are not accessing it via Google Classroom, you can collect emails so that you can give their feedback to them. If you do know that they are taking it inside your classroom, you can make it a quiz. You can use some of these other kind of settings. I think if I'm...
And the biggest one there is if it's not a quiz, you have to make a question, or you have to either collect email addresses or add a question about students adding their name. Otherwise, you get all the data with no name attached to it.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I see lock the room can be implemented at home, yes. So you can, this is something that I saw some school emails about. You absolutely can lock this in, but you know, ed technologists at schools vary, and what settings they put on that Chromebook that a student might be borrowing from the school might cause more problems than I think this is worth. So, but you should try it and let us know how it worked out. It's not something that I've been using, so I'd love to, yeah, I see some people seem to be discussing the same kind of security versus wanting to make sure that students have access. Okay, but so this was a form and now I'm making it into a quiz. So when I make a question, now that it's designated with my settings as a quiz, I can change here the answer key and I can add answer feedback. So if they got that these are, you know, the factions that Beatrice and Candor are in, I can say something as bland as you are so, let's see, for the correct one, I could say, you are the best. Nice work. And for the incorrect ones, I could say something like, you know,
Look back at page 5 or something.
this is a film, right? Look back at part 1. But what makes, I think, this really robust, and what I'm thinking about in smart feedback, is depending on what I have available for me. If it's a book, I can give them the link to a picture or a PDF of that book here because I have a link. If it's a film, I can go into YouTube and I can search and give them that clip as a feedback, so that it becomes an assessment for learning, so that I give them, I'm less interested in it being a summative, but it being formative, like how do you do better? How do you find the information? So this feedback area is quite rich. So before, when I said like, oh, you're the best, nice work, if you do research on feedback, you know that this is not necessarily helpful to continue someone's learning. The best feedback makes somebody think. So an incorrect, better writing of it based on research would be to say, let's think about that some more. I posted the clip again below. Right, so, and then you can put that clip here. Does that make sense?
Yep, Christine, can you just slow-mo setting up how to get to where you are right now?
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to cancel it. So this is just, you make a question, and when I made this question, I can choose multiple choice. I have lots and lots and lots of choices. But if it's a discrete, you know, what faction, right there, it is a, there are specific answers, then I will put my answers here. I list them. So you just have options. So I'll just kind of, you know, dauntless, add another option. I can't say these. And then I can even add other, which will be a blank that they can write in. So these are my multiple choices. Because I've enabled this as a quiz, I'll click on answer key. And first I will set which ones are correct. And Google is helping me here and saying, okay. And I can even, if I am interested in the points, in addition to the feedback, I could say, okay, this is gonna be 50 points, or I don't know, maybe 10 points. Then I'll do add answer feedback, and I can give feedback based on if it's incorrect. And I also can give feedback when they've gotten it correct. And my take on smart feedback is that it keeps them thinking. So it's not just praise. So for the incorrect answer, I could say, see the link below, see the video clip below, because this is a movie. I could even ask a question, because in this, you know, why do you think they are in, this is the name of their group. Whoops.
And then a question here is, are you able to give feedback to a group of students at the same time, I think, on feedback?
No, because this is asynchronous. You might have like a bank of feedback, like you might notice when you're looking at the data, oh wow, everyone's getting this particular question wrong. And for that, you know, sometimes it's completely possible. Maybe you wrote the question in a really difficult way, right? Which faction? And oh wow, I realized it's only one faction. I'm not that familiar with this quiz. It's another teacher that was sharing it with me. But if I decide I actually made a mistake here, the nice thing about Google Forms is you can fix it and then it will adjust the feedback that folks get. So if I look at this question, if I look at my data and I see, wow, everyone's getting that wrong, I can change the amount of points, and I can also take it off as an answer. Oops. So if there's only one answer, let's say I generally made a mistake, and looking at students' answers, I realize that, then I can resend this feedback that says, my mistake, there's only one answer.
And another person asked, do you think this is the best option for quiz creation? If not, is there something else you'd recommend?
So it depends on your purpose of the quiz. If your purpose is to give feedback and you're not minding too much about security, in these times, I'd say this is pretty good. Going back to those, I think what I'm hearing from teachers in terms of students' motivation, in terms of setting up ways that we can have students continue and feel motivated. So going back to quizzes, I don't mean to lecture about this, but some people are afraid of assessments and get really uptight. So if you want to kind of go on that side of the spectrum where you don't want to necessarily have an assessment that's high stakes, I'd say Google Forms are pretty good. If you have access to things that are like a learning management system, whether it's Blackboard or Moodle or what's the other one, Schoology, they have much deeper things for security and things for the level of feedback you can give. I think this level of feedback is pretty good. It can be a link, anything that's a link, and it can be a video, and it can be your kind words. And even at the end, you can give feedback overall on the whole quiz. So I think that's pretty good. I don't know, did I answer that? So in terms of best quiz creation, it does give you a lot of question types, and it does allow you to give feedback and points.
And can I add on to that, Christine?
Yeah,
I think what I really like about it too, I have 160 students. So sometimes if I create a Google form, I actually have the highest participation on those days. And then you can, maybe Christine, I'm not sure if you're gonna get to this, but downloading the scores and then importing it into Google Classroom. So it automatically is scored for you and it automatically updates the gradebook on Google Classroom. So I think that makes it easy.
Mm-hmm. So just to kind of, I'm seeing that our time is kind of short, and I'm willing to kind of keep going if people want to stay and ask more questions, or just, I had more things I wanted to show you, but because I like that we're interacting and asking and answering questions, it's, I couldn't do everything. So this is the back end of a teacher's form, whether it's a quiz with points or not. And so either way, whether it's something that you made a quiz with points or not, you can create this spreadsheet and it will give you data. And this is important because some schools will ask you to use something like Scheduler or Gradebook. So even though you like the way things look in Google Classroom, so be it, you need to grab the data from this sheet and either upload it or manually put in these grades. So that's important to know, that this button here gives you an Excel sheet that you can then sort out and integrate into other systems of grading. And then Sheila, help me, I forgot, what was the other question?
That's it. I think was the other, yeah. Giving feedback to a group of students, you answered that. And then if this is the best option, yeah. And will there be a recording of this webinar available?
Yes, there is. And so I'll just double check with Sheila if that's okay. And any other participant, I did manage this time to press the record button. Usually I'm too nervous to do that, or we're showing kind of more sensitive materials. There wasn't anyone, you guys were kind of quiet, so I don't think there will be any other faces besides Sheila's and mine. But if you have any objection, because to be really professional about it, I do like to ask people. So if anyone in the chat, you can chat me privately. Let me know if you object to that, and then I wouldn't share it. But otherwise, I have it. recording right now. What I think is really useful in learning technology is kind of doing some watching of how-to videos on your own. I put some here that I like a lot. There's a longer overview, where to save quizzes. Like this guy did a video on, he's saying like some strong opposition to the way that Google Classroom will save your videos, and gives you a tip to kind of go around some problems that you might have if you do it strictly inside Google Classroom in terms of finding it and importing questions later. So that's an important one to watch. This one is important because it gets at this importing grade issue. And then you have other ones here that I also liked quite a bit. If you have one that you like, some of you recommended some tools, please come back in here and feel free to put them on the stream. If you want to practice more quizzes, they're here. If you have any trouble with them, let me know. If you want a copy of them, let me know, because now that you're in my classroom, I have your email and I can share quizzes or forms. So you see here that in your settings or in send, that's the final thing for sharing them. You can share by a link like I did with you. You can share by adding collaborators. So if there is a quiz that you like and you want to save some time, just let me know. I will invite you into the quiz, and then you can make a copy of it. Okay, so thanks for bearing with us. It was a different style of doing this kind of work. I'll go back to, it's always slightly awkward, and you're never sure if you did a good enough job, but that's the idea of the Google Classroom. So if you have more questions, you can email me, or you can contact the whole group and share with the whole group on the Google Classroom.